Did you know the top 10 mobile games in the US grossed more than $340 million in June? Do you want your game to earn more? App Figures is all about giving game makers the tools they need to get more downloads and revenue. You may already know them for analytics and app store optimization. Now, App Figures can help you keep track of competitors and the game market, from how many downloads they're getting and how much money they're making to their audience demographics and even which tools they use to power their games. Their competitor intelligence gives you great context. Got a great idea for an app or a game? With App Figures, you can figure out how big the market is and how much money you could be making with it. Say a competitor adds a new feature or was mentioned in the news. With App Figures, you can see if that brought in more downloads, and that's just scratching the surface. Whether you're growing your game or building a new one, App Figures has what you need to reduce risk and get more downloads. Best of all, you don't need a large budget or data science degree to do this kind of thing anymore. App Figures has made it affordable and simple. On top of tools, App Figures also provides a lot of guides and tutorials to take you step by step through gaining more visibility with ASO and increasing your revenue by learning from your competitors. They just released a free guide on that, actually. Head to appfigures.com/on/gaindev unchained to try App Figures for free. Again, that's App Figures, appfigures.com/on/gaindev unchained to try it for free. If you like it, use our special code GDU3030 to get 30% off for the next 3 months. What's up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Game Dev Unchained, the #1 game development podcast about game development and the lifestyle thereof. I am your host, Brandon Pham, and with me, a special guest whom I thought I had on before but didn't, Ryan Bullock. How you doing, Ryan?
Doing all right. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, this is great to finally have you on, regardless of the fact that I thought I had you on. But this is the part of the podcast where I have our guest, which is yourself. Introduce yourself to the listeners out there. Who you are, where you've been, where you at, where you heading.
Let's see. So, I started off and started doing 3D way back in probably the Quake 3, Duke Nukem 3D days and doing mods. Decided to drop out of business school and go to art school. Started in I was actually
I didn't know.
I went to university. I went to university for international business and marketing. And did 2 years there, and ended up taking some art courses, and was like, no, I'm out.
That's so opposite. I'm sure your parents were so proud of you. Is that a 4-year school program?
Yeah, it was a 4-year. Yeah.
Oh, man.
It just there's something. I woke up one morning, I just knew, like, I'm done with this. I need to go do something. I've always been into art, so it was kind of a coming home to, I think, what I should have started with in the first place. But no, and went to art school. Started working in the industry in 2005. Did a couple of studios. Got starting indie, AAA startup. I think my career really started taking off when I started working at Sledgehammer. So that was, starting in the last year of production on Advanced Warfare, and then rolling on into World War II. And then kind of got a call from a big tech company, O1, by the name of Apple. And they were like, hey, we need someone who can do some hard surface stuff. All right, cool. Let's talk. Went through the whole interview process there, and I'm here now. So that's kind of the rest of the story. I think I turned in my acceptance offer the day we shipped World War II.
That is
a weird,
direct line right there.
Yeah.
Where does the family get into play here? The wife, the kids?
So let's see. we moved from Seattle down to Bay Area in 2000 into 2013,
Okay.
the tail end of Advanced Warfare production. And so we had, let's see, my oldest was 5, and my youngest was, no, the oldest was 8.
Yeah.
Then middle child was 3, and then the youngest was 6 months, I think, when we moved. So they kind of grew up in California, really. That's most of what they remember. And so it was kind of great to get out and to live somewhere new. Seattle's home, Pacific Northwest is home, but I've lived all over the U.S. But it was kind of nice for the family to get out and see something different, be somewhere different. And so we kind of just thought of it as a big adventure.
Yeah.
When we moved down there, we thought we were going to go down, ship a game, and then move back to Seattle.
Wow.
And ended up staying, 8 years, I think, down in Bay Area. So it was stayed about twice as long as we wanted. And now we all miss it.
Do you really miss it that much though? Like,
You
I've
know,
always wondered because I've grown up and been in California my whole life, and I'm always afraid that I'm so sheltered in what the outside world is like, and I could be probably enjoying it somewhere else, but because I never ventured off. But so I'm always curious for people who've been here and then going to other states. Do they feel that way really, or is
um,
it really much
I
better
don't,
somewhere else?
it's hard to say. I think there's always an element of grass is greener on the other side, no matter where
Okay.
you go. It's always going to be a list of pros and cons, and you just kind of like try to align yourself with the pros that mean the most to you, and you just deal with the negatives as they come up. Um, I think the hardest the hardest part I think about being back up here is the weather. It's just not something that you ever had to worry about down in California. Every now and then you're like, oh God, what is this? Something's going on here. Where's my blue sky? Um,
So it's
but
cloudy, rainy.
yeah,
That's all true.
yeah, oh yeah, yeah. Except for this past week, it was close to 100 degrees up here. Um,
Thank God for
but no,
that.
I think there's elements of California that I absolutely miss.
Yeah.
But being up near family, I think right now is super important as my parents are getting older.
Right.
My sister lives on the other side of the country, so it's nice to have one of the siblings here to
Yeah.
help out, if needed,
Of course.
which was ultimately kind of the big reason that we ended up moving back up to Seattle towards the beginning of the pandemic. Um, my mom had just gone through a bout of breast cancer, and she was recovering,
Yeah.
and just my dad's getting old as well, and so I was like, well, maybe we should scoot back up there and help out with the family uh,
Yeah.
as
As
much
the
as we
world is
can.
ending, supposedly,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
Get the best
yeah.
time to kind of figure that out. Yeah.
Yeah, and it worked out. We were able to move back up right before mortgage rates and everything kind of took off in the housing
Yeah.
market. So
You
we
hit
were able
perfectly,
to
man.
we caught the last train is how we reference it.
Yeah.
Um, and now that we're like, well, maybe we'll move back to California, and then you start looking at the interest rates again. You're like, no, that's expensive.
Just wait for the next pandemic.
Yeah,
Uh,
right. It's the return
I,
back to California pandemic.
well, I mean, my view of you and your career and everything you've done has always been like precision strikes. Like you were you're a very careful speaker. You're well composed, like versus other people.
That's so funny because I never feel like that when I'm talking to people.
You seem like a guy who has it all together most of the time when I'm talking to you, right? So, and I do want to talk family aspect a bit, right? But
Mhm.
um, you know, I kind of went through the industry with the family as well. I got married super young, and basically my first job was with my wife first, and then the kids started trickling in my 20s, right? I basically lived my 20s like most people live their 30s, right? I feel like that's something you can relate. And it is kind
Mhm.
of like a hidden trump card because it did make me work harder. I did look at career goals more seriously than people my age,
Mhm.
because, I have to, right? Because I enjoy luxuries as well as not just
Yes.
surviving. And for that reason, I progressed pretty quickly. was that kind of similar situation to you? Or like, hey, I have a plan. It's nice to have this job, but I need to think and look ahead, 2, 3 years from now as well. I can't just like it just because of liking it.
Um, no, I think I was probably a little different in that respect.
Okay.
I I loved working in video games. Right, that was my goal. Like, and once I got in, I was there. Like, I was happy. I was content career wise. It wasn't until I started working at Sledgehammer and actually started getting approached um, by other companies at times, like when I would update portfolio or whatever, and they would start pinging me. And it really wasn't until probably my mid 30s that I started thinking, it's like, okay, well, I've been a weapons artist for 10 years now. It's starting to get a little old. Not going to lie, like all the school shootings start to wear on you when you're staring at a weapon that's being used in the shooting, and you see how do you work, especially having kids, right? So you can relate. And so that's when I kind of started thinking about, well, what would be next? What should be, the midlife career switch? And I think that's when is about that time when Apple called and started talking with them, and it's like, this is. I don't think I was quite ready to leave the industry, but I think it was time. That was just my thing. That was how I interpreted it at the time, and so no, I didn't
That was
really have career.
2015, 16.
2018 is when I started,
18.
early 2018. So I didn't really have career goals. I think it was more art goals, and that drove the career. Looking back, like, it's always want to be,
It just worked out
better. This, yeah,
Yeah.
it just, well, and my wife and I talk about it all the time. Like, we're very, very fortunate to be in the position that we are in the middle of a pandemic, and I've been very fortunate. I think my whole career, whether that's a bit of luck, whether that's how I've positioned myself, it wasn't a conscious positioning. Um, we're the end result is, I've had a very fortunate career, um, and I think I've always kind of relied on the fact that the stability doesn't come from the company; it comes from how good you are at what you do.
Yeah.
And so there is a focus there that um, maybe has been developed over time, that was really kind of came from just being as good as I can be, and just trickling out portfolio work here and there, just to kind of be still there, right? People see the post on ArtStation, or they see the update on LinkedIn or Twitter or whatever. And I think it's important for people that are, artists like myself and others, that, you can get so ingrained in a production workflow, that there is that career management side of it that you do kind of need to work on and kind of need to nurture. Doesn't have to be all the time. Doesn't have to be every week you're uploading something new. It doesn't have to be crazy hours after work. But it does. I think there's a huge benefit for it. To constantly just kind of trickle your stuff out there on occasion.
Well, it definitely, you're a testament to that. It's working out. Like,
yeah,
I guess
that's so far.
Well, did you feel at any point your business background is kicking in at this age, at this later part of your career? Like, some of that is somehow helping you, because you are a little bit better than, I would say, peers, right? At our I will say this. I will say this. I will say this. All right. I'll paint you. I'll
Okay.
paint you what I'm talking about. Right. So I always related to the Great Migration, right? Around 2018, 2015, 2016, when these tech companies were growing a gaming sector, right? And it was at that point a lot of AAA devs were not knowing about this blossoming industry, and only a few took the leap and kind of paved the way to now. I think it's more regular to have friends at Facebook, at Google, and Apple and such, right?
Yeah.
That wasn't a thing 5 years ago, right?
Yeah,
So I think
yeah.
you were one of the first that I knew in my circles that was like making that move, and a move that I didn't know was possible, right? It's like,
Yeah.
hey, we can do our thing somewhere else, more stable and bigger. So that's why I kind of credit you to like, well, even if it seems accidental, but like
Yeah.
I feel like, uh, you made an evaluation at that point, and you're like, hey, I think this is where we're kind of going. This is where it's more stable, and
Yeah.
you know,
You know, I guess in that context, yeah, like I kind of was one of the early adopters, early-ish adopters.
yeah,
I remember, when I worked at Sledgehammer, I was very distinctly looking at other industries,
yeah,
just to kind of keep up to date. I knew, AR, VR was a big one, simulations.
right.
Uh, God, maybe, yeah,
There's
there's a ton,
everything.
right?
Yeah.
There's everything, and I think with me, like I used to freelance for a company that did forensic animation,
Okay.
and I think that was my first kind of non-game introduction uh, to like, wow, I've got this amazing skill set, and now it can be used somewhere else.
Yeah.
And then for that, there was freelance where I was working with this guy up in Canada who would 3D print jewelry from video games. So I went through and created rings and necklaces and stuff from Skyrim and all these other big games, and send him over the files, and he would print them out and sell them on Etsy and other channels. And that was probably around 2015, 2016 as well.
Hmm.
So I guess in those kind of early days, yeah, freelance was the way for me to explore those other industries and kind of see kind of what was out there, and kind of pad the portfolio a little bit with non-weapon work. I guess don't want to pigeonhole myself too much. Um, but yeah, I mean, the whole movement to tech uh, is interesting. There's I never would have thought, when I started my career 15, 20 years ago, that being in 3D would have led here. In no way did my brain, I figured, if I was, making video games and making, $50,000, $60,000 a year, I'd be happy for the rest of my life, which is way off.
Hmm.
But yeah, it's been a crazy journey. And I think that, comes back to what I said earlier, is like just investing in yourself and being good at what you do is your greatest stability, because the jobs are going to come and go, and the industries are going to come and go. Um, and so it's just about kind of keeping up and keeping your eye out there.
Hmm. Well, if you don't mind, kind of walking through that first day, right? You don't have to describe the cafeteria or anything, but like,
Yeah.
it's a big shift. I mean, over at Sledgehammer, it was a pretty good studio, but it's
Hmm.
it's no like Riot or these mega studios, but it was a good,
Right.
uh, typical high AAA studio. So
Yeah.
going from there into somewhere like Apple, where it's like its own campus,
Yeah.
um, what was that? What was the feeling? Did you feel pretty confident? I mean, I would assume that there's a lot of talented people on your team, but yeah, come on. I
Mhm.
mean, right, you're
Uh,
probably one of the best ones in this first
no.
group of people.
Mm,
No, no. All
no. Oh
right,
man, no.
paint me this picture.
I I think one of the things that really attracted me to moving to tech, was the caliber of people, and that was the same thing that uh, made the decision for me to go to Sledgehammer. It was the caliber of people,
Hmm.
but the team that was is assembled here that I work for, the org is um, intimidatingly good. um, to the point where it's like you don't know if you're going to be talking with someone who has a PhD in neuroscience or
Oh
worked
yeah,
at NASA's Jet Propulsion
right, right,
Laboratory
right, right.
or whatever, right? So that first day, I think, it was very eye opening. Um, Going from video games to tech, it was much more corporate. Um, and I think the thing that actually really struck me was the first of all, the amount of people you go through employee orientation, and at that point they're having like 300 people every day go through new employee orientation, and that was for all of Apple, it wasn't just for our org. But just the variety and diversity of people, that they employ. um, I think I've interacted with more diverse population in the first week at Apple than I had in 15 years in games. So I think that was the biggest thing that stood out to me was it felt more like a kind of like a college campus. It's just all walks of life, and everyone that you interact with is absolutely like one of the best at what they do. Uh, that being said, I didn't work at the big campus. We were in a satellite campus a couple miles away. Um, so I didn't get like that huge big campus experience where you walk into,
Spot,
I,
yeah,
I don't even know if I had like security access.
Yeah.
It was just our little kind of building.
Yeah.
But to see that team grow is pretty awesome. It was
Do you mind kind of estimate like when you first came in to now, like how big your team, your organization is? That like non?
It was yeah. I think we're bordering of that. I will say that I was one of the early ones, and it has grown tremendously at that time.
Okay.
I think the org had only been around maybe a year and a half before I joined. So yeah, it's a huge team now.
Yeah, it's funny because it is around that time where VR, Oculus was starting to do their things more seriously. Google, hence no more, did not.
Yeah.
That's when they had their Stadia team, right?
Yeah.
Everybody was kind of doing something, because with video games, what drives more engagement than video games, right? And that's the main thing with all these companies. It's about engagement.
Yep.
Even Tesla, right?
Yeah.
We have a lot of good friends over there right now that are doing their own gaming sector.
Yeah, I got ghosted by Tesla actually.
Yeah.
They reached out to me to do an interview, and I chatted with the recruiter, and he's like, "Yeah, okay, we'll set up a call with the project manager guy." And sure enough, like showed up for the call, and no one showed up.
Oh, of course. Yeah. Oh my god. They never got back to you there.
Never got back to me, which that's fine. I'll gladly dodge that bullet.
Yeah, I think Toga's over there.
Yeah, I think he is. Yep. Yeah, he was out of startup for a while, I think, right? And then he's over there. Yeah, been there a couple years now. Yeah.
Yeah, and then he left again, right? Well, anyways, well, I think that was the beginning of the year. Like I said, a lot of our friends, including yourself, that I knew, were spreading into those areas, and through the exploration of like, I noted the same thing, right? I never gone into tech. I think after Sledge, I went to mobile a little bit, right, to see what that world was about. And I feel, if anything, mobile is kind of like the in between of a AAA and a tech company. Not as big as tech companies, slightly bigger than AAA, and a mixture of that. What you're saying, like data scientists, analytical, and like the game sector. The game team is like this much smaller, right? It's like this small, and then everybody else like, what do you do? It's like, do you know how to make what? I make sure that you get paid. I was like, oh, okay.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Well, all right. Well, we'll set up a weekly sync.
Yeah. We'll keep talking. Yeah. But yeah, it opened my eyes on, is this video games evolving like as a business, as a structure? Because mobile, if anything, is very disciplined. They're looking at day to day. Profits only, right? There's no promise of like this might be a great game. It's like, this is a great game, we'll iterate it and maximize the profit, and next year you'll be fine, right? And so at first my biggest thing was the pressure of AAA development was completely off, right? It was all about culture, it was all about coming with ideas that work and figuring it out. There was no green light meetings that you have to constantly worry about. So that was nice. And I was starting to understand, it's like, I can see why people who's been around in the industry for a while might find this pretty relieving, especially with the family. It just feels more of a safer space to grow.
Yeah. Oh, right? Totally. Yeah, I can
imagine it was kind of similar feeling to you, right?
Yeah, I mean, it was. I think that transition. I mean, working on Call of Duty, as you know, I mean, there's a ton of scrutiny, right? I mean, your trailer or whatever is going to be up on an 80-foot plasma screen in front of thousands of people, and it's going to be poured over by Digital Foundry on YouTube, and everything's going to be analyzed, right? So, especially working on weapons, like it's front and center right there, right? Like
it's not good. It's not super pixelated.
There are times where like I would see like normal map errors. and you're just like, oh my gosh, like how did that get approved, or how did that, but
Yeah.
it's like 0.001% of the population is going to see that one specific error in that one area.
Right.
Gamers aren't going to care.
Yeah.
And yeah, there was that sense of, okay, so this definitely feels a little more relaxed.
Yeah.
It feels more supportive,
Yeah.
with in regards to like career growth, and how you are as a person.
Yeah.
And I don't know if that's Apple specific or if it's tech, because I've heard horror stories from other companies as well. But at least where I'm at, I feel like I've got support in the career goals that I want to hit, which is totally new to me. My manager asks me some very pointed questions sometimes, and my only answer is like, I don't know. I will have to get back to you. So I think moving to that tech, or maybe just outside of video games, um, there is that element of stability and that element of maturity. I think that comes with ultimately leaving what is kind of an immature industry. And I don't mean immature in like, I mean like age wise, right? The video games industry hasn't been around for a long time.
Right.
Whereas, you go to these other companies that, the managers are, they've had 20, 30, 40-year-old or 40-year long careers. It's been honed over time. But that being said, like that stress is definitely there. And I think that stress is 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 worse than working in games, because there's so much at stake. Uh, whether it's a function of the increased salary and compensation, that if you mess up, that could possibly go away.
Yeah.
Whereas, if I got fired from Sledgehammer, okay, I mean, I would suck, because that was a really, really fun job.
Yeah.
But the pay is video game pay.
Yeah.
It's not nearly what you would get outside of video games. And maybe it's a function of also, me being older and actually needing to look at retirement in a more like
Serious.
considered way.
Yeah.
Like, oh gosh, like I am actually going to have to pay for myself when I can no longer work. Like, this is weird thinking about this. Like, why do I need to think about this?
Carry that old fart.
Yeah.
There, right.
So I think there's definitely like, there's not so much like stress to perform at an artistic level. I think there's stress to not make a career ending decision. I think it's, is this the big one.
It's very true. I think, in the late 20s, early 30s, when I started to consider more of what comes after, right? In a more serious manner, because I got in the industry pretty young. I always was kind of like the young guy at every position I was in, until I wasn't anymore, and that got really real really quick. I was like, whoa.
Yeah.
How old are you again? He was like, you're 22. I was like, damn. This is your first game? All right.
Oh, yeah, it's funny that you bring that up, because all of a sudden, like, I think my natural inclination is to always assume that the person that I'm talking to, or the people that I work with, are older and know more than I do.
Yeah.
Like, that's just maybe it's just me, maybe that's just natural. But all of a sudden, like, I'm in a position here where people come to me for answers.
Yeah.
And it's like, wait, I don't know. Like, oh gosh. And then, you start to see the gray hairs pop in, you start to sprinkle out, and all of a sudden you're like, no, I am the older person on the team now.
Yeah.
Oh, this is kind of depressing.
Yeah, it hits you like a punch in the face, right? And
almost overnight. Yeah.
Yeah, almost overnight. We were playing basketball at Sledge, right? And I was the young guy at one point, and then I wasn't near the after advanced player too. And now when I play in regular pickup games, it's like I'm one of the older guys now. It's just painful to accept, but it is the way it is. But it is something I notice immediately when I look around at a AAA studio at a company, and I was like, where are all the old guys, right? These guys are not that much older than I am. And so it really is intimidating because there's not a person who kind of has gone through, that career growth and planning and showed basically the blueprint of this is how you can retire at a game company, right? I was looking around, I was like, I don't think it's been done yet. And at best, it's experimental right now. And
Yeah.
it does scare me because it's like, we were in a cycle of bunch of layoffs or job security issues. And,
Yep.
there's only certain amount of companies that in the Bay Area, LA, right? And you have to live around these super expensive places. And that, of course, eats into your long-term growth and everything, right? And it was a real crisis. And a certain someone wouldn't raise the pay grade to make
Who will not
sense
be
for
named.
everybody.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And basically, it felt very out of control. And I think, if any, like, especially that group that I would say, graduated from Sledgehammer, right?
Yeah.
Are doing very well.
Yeah.
Because I think they face a similar crisis, right? They're like, oh, I can't stay here forever. No,
Right.
I love it here, but I can't stay
Yeah.
here.
And that's where I'm with it. Like, I love it there, but it's hard living. And at a certain point, when like got brought into Sledgehammer, I only made, I think, like $10,000 more a year than what I was making up here in Seattle.
I know.
And so, but you're looking at like a 30-40%, cost of living increase. And this is, 10 years ago. So it's a little different now, like the cost of living between the two areas. But no, I think for the majority of the time that, we were in that time, that advanced warfare to World War II ship, unless you're making 120, 130,000 a year, like, you're paying to work there, and you see your savings go down just a little bit, and then you get the bonus check from advanced warfare, and it kind of comes back up, and then it kind of is down, and 3 months later you get your bonus check, and you really are like,
paying to work there. That's exactly how it felt, right? Because
that's exactly what it was.
Yeah, it was exactly what it was, because World War II, we were doing R&D. I was there for a year before I left, right, for the World War II part of the game, and we were doing R&D, and I was tasked to making trenches, right? This is one we were trying to figure out, and I'm like digging these trenches in 3D, and I remember at that point I was living in a 1-bedroom apartment, right, with the young kid, right, and we were basically making the living room into a studio bedroom, like, just because I wanted to live close to work. I just absolutely wanted to live next to work. I didn't want to commute. I hated commuting, and that was a sacrifice we made just to live within 3 miles of work, right?
Yeah.
I was looking at that. I was making the trenches, like, I feel like this is kind of metaphorically
this is metaphor
to me right now. I'm like digging my own trench, and it was a real big realization moment for me, where my brain did turn off. And I love Tolga. He's probably one of the best director of production or whatever that I ever had. And I kind of always look back, and I kind of felt bad, because I know he was trying his best to kind of motivate, because I think he was getting a sense of what everybody was feeling at that point, because at that point we were getting our life-changing bonuses and such, and got a little depressed about it. And he was sitting there with my yearly reviews, right? And this is the first time where I did not even care and tried, but in a very nice way. He was asking me, like, what's your 5-10 year plan? It's like, are we even gonna be around 5 years? What's your 5 year? What's the studio's 5-year plan, right? Just bluntly putting it out there, because that's how I felt. Because, like you said, every company after, I felt like there was always some type of you work here, but let's get your life in order after working here. Get your retirement going. Here's some company stocks. Here's some like things that I've never even heard of before at Sledge, right? But I didn't feel that at a typical AAA studio up to that point, right?
Right.
And like many others, made a career change, just exploring like what options are there.
Yeah.
And I think, thankfully, I love the fact that as game developers, we have so many choices now, and the tech companies
Oh,
being like a
yeah.
great avenue. Not just tech, like I hear people in automotive industries now, like every type of industry they can think of. Animation, people are doing it straight out of Unreal now. There's so
Yeah.
many applications now
There's
for what we do.
it's amazing,
It's
and it's
amazing.
it's absolutely blown up just in the past like 7 or 8 years. I mean, who would have thought that when I was working with Unreal 3, and I mean I started with Unreal 2X, right? So long time ago. I kind of skipped UDK. I don't really use UDK all that much, but I would have never thought that this would be used as like a virtual production tool in film.
Nope, nope.
I mean that's like the
It's crazy.
craziest thing. It is so cool that they have this tech that is like my skills are directly applicable to. And I, I think because of so many avenues, and those non-game industry avenues are fairly well paying, if not well paying, then they're average pay. That's not below pay like you get in video games.
Right.
That has forced the industry to kind of look at itself among all these other things that are going on with diversity and inclusion, and the stuff that's going on with Blizzard and all these other big companies. The video game industry has to get competitive with
Yeah.
with compensation, or you're gonna see what started 4 or 5 years ago with people just leaving because they're growing up.
Yeah.
And so it's amazing to think that our skill sets are can go to those industries, and I think it's great for the video game industry because it kind of forces it's a forcing function. It's going
It
to
is a
force,
forcing function. Yeah.
yeah, it's going to force games to do something to better the lives of the people that create these awesome experiences for others.
In both ways, the employer side but employee. Like we have
Yeah.
friends that are still working on games, on great games. But I think as of late, you probably see it in the last year or two. Like these guys have been in the machine for a while, and they work on the biggest games. Last of Us, all these dream games that everybody would love. But like they hit the pinnacle like of these games, of game making. Right? It's like this is
Mhm.
what defines AAA. This is it. Once you get one of that out of your system, all right, what do you do? All right, let's I guess do another one, and they get kind of lost.
Yeah.
I do have a lot of friends that are like soul searching right now a bit. It's like, well, I've done one of those games before. It's like, do I keep making another one until I die?
Yeah,
uh, it gets
I
kind of
think I think I went through the same thing with Call of Duty. It was
yeah,
like, okay, yeah, there are other games I can go to, other studios, or continue working here. I mean, for what it is, like Call of Duty is great if you're a weapons artist, right? I mean, it's top 10%, top 5%, at least in my opinion. But yeah, at a certain point, you're like, okay, well, I'm kind of getting bored.
yeah,
I'm kind of feeling something different, and I don't want to go to a my 50th birthday or whatever saying I'm a weapons artist. Like
I know
I've
it
been
is
working on
kind of
Call of Duty for
hard.
15, and it's not that I'm ashamed or anything like that or embarrassed by it. I mean, one of the great things about working on that franchise is you put your shirt on, you go out to the store, and it's pretty common that people ask about it. Like, oh man, did you work on that? Yeah, I did. It's pretty cool. Um, but at a certain point, you just kind of start wondering, like, well, maybe there's something more I could be doing. Maybe there's other skills that I could develop, or something. There's other itches that are coming up that I need to scratch. And I think that's probably ultimately like the reason why I left. Um, it was just, I think it was just time.
Yeah. Um.
I'm glad I did. I think things kind of quickly fell apart. I mean, Arco was my lead, right, and he was probably one of the best leads that I'd had in games. And I think if I would have stuck around and then watched him leave, I probably would have just left as well. I mean, they say people don't leave jobs; they leave managers.
Right.
And I think that would have been my case if I would have stayed another 6 or 7 months.
Yeah. I think I got out around the right time as well. I was really. I talk about this on the pod a lot, but um, it was a real turning point for me on a personal level, but career wise, because that was the first game. Advanced Warfare was the first game in my career where I didn't even, until this day, open up the wrapper. Right, every game I ever
Yeah.
made, I open up the wrapper, I play it from beginning to end, day one. But I think we had like a little small one of those GameStop meet the developer kind of events, right? It was kind of
Hmm.
impromptu, and I remember standing there, and I just didn't have that excitement, of
Yeah.
of what I was expecting, right? And I really was questioning what I was doing if I didn't
Yeah.
feel that anymore. And I didn't. It really hit me in a way where I was very surprised and shocked, and there was a lot. There was a good few months after of thinking about what I wanted to do,
Yeah.
because there's
Yeah.
two ways of coming out with that, right? Is you got to face it yourself, and then you got to tell your wife, right? And it's like, hey, I think
Mhm.
I got to change things up
We got to
here.
do things.
like, what do you mean change things up? It's like,
Well, I know you want stability, but
I know, right?
no,
I'm gonna be
yeah,
a cop,
that,
right?
you're right. Yeah, I'm gonna go low. Maybe like, my dad always used to say that my dad worked in hospitality for like 35 years, right? Same company his whole career. And he always said that he wanted to go mow lawns at a cemetery so he didn't have to talk to anyone anymore.
So
And
true.
I'm like,
Yeah.
yeah, I think you get to a certain age, and I mean, I'm 41, right? So you're hitting that midlife crisis time in full force,
Yeah.
and you start to think like, did I make the right decisions? Did I, this is where I've staked my future. I've staked my time on this planet doing this. Um, and you start to think like, well, maybe there's something more. Maybe there's something I could be doing else to give back more than just entertainment. I mean, which is a huge thing, especially with the pandemic. Like this entertainment has, I think, kept a lot of people from going into a really really dark place. So I'm not trying to underestimate or lessen the importance of entertainment and escapes, especially in this world. Um, but I always felt like it was important for me to give back, um, with my skill set, and so that's when I started mentoring a lot more, and that was kind of like that initial exploration into what else can I do. But I think with Sledgehammer, and I think with games in general, like it's can be so restrictive in what you can do outside of the
Oh
job
yeah.
that really like is really just like a
It's
really
kind of offensive.
demoralizing.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, it's like more
It's
than
like in the
just
contract. It's like you cannot even think about
yeah.
doing anything
Right,
else contractually.
right.
It's, I remember I'm a lot more open to it now to talk about my horror story, but um, I was starting to teach, while working at a game studio that we both worked at, right? Put two
Hmm.
and two together right there, and then and I was teaching on the side, and it was just on the weekends, completely out of work hours, didn't even interfere with it, right? And then and I was avoiding like just telling because it didn't mix, right? There was no reason for
Yeah,
me to even talk about it at work. Then a friend like mentioned to me at work, it's like, hey, you should. There's the whole process. You just do it, and they get it approved, just so that cover your butt. Nothing crazy. I just did it. It's fine. I was like, all right, I'll just do it, I guess. Big mistake, right? As soon as I did that, I
yeah,
got an email saying like, hey, and then got called in the office. I was like, hey, we saw your request. We're concerned because this is our shipping year at the end of the year. You know, we're afraid that you might not have enough time to do this in the weekend, right? I was like, if I don't have time to myself in the weekend, then we have a bigger issue to talk
we have
about
bigger
here.
issues here.
We're talking
Yeah,
about 4 hours of teaching here, uh,
yeah,
right?
right.
On my Saturday, right? Like this is my time,
Yeah,
and I got so upset and probably began my inner hate for all
yeah,
things AAA, because it was at that moment where you were hearing a lot of your friends can't freelance.
yeah.
Even to this day, a lot of these bigger companies, you can't freelance, you can't do anything, you can't even do personal art. Like it's gotten that restrictive,
It's
where it's
gotten
like,
that bad.
yeah, it's gotten
Yep.
that bad. Which personal art before I thought was like personal research. It's a plus for you guys, right? But not even to this day. Now you can't publish anything on ArtStation. willing to think about tweeting
Yeah.
that, right, without getting it approved by us first, if it's my personal stuff. So this old uh, sadistic method of basically enslaving. I mean, this is the reason why
Yeah.
we called the podcast "Game Dev Unchained," is because it felt
Right.
like we were being chained to the desk.
Yes.
Um,
Yeah.
well, this is the point I'm making.
Yeah.
Right? I feel like I love the fact that there's a lot of avenues now here, and I feel like the veterans, if probably a big body of veterans have been migrating to different different industries, tech, automotive, movies, whatever. Because I feel like the game industry overall is a young industry, and it is probably best for younger folks. Like the demands that it is asking for is basically if you're single, young, and able to work long hours, that is kind of what's encouraged still,
Yeah.
for promotion and salary raises, and as
Yeah.
an
And
example. Yeah.
yeah, I think it's, I don't know. Now that I think about it, I'm an eternal
PTSD is coming back
optimist.
to you.
Yeah, yeah. No, well, I'm an eternal optimist, right? So I
Yeah.
always try to look and see that things are getting better.
Yeah.
But I think it's a double-edged sword, right? I think conditions have gotten better, but as the industry grows, it becomes more focused on the profit,
Yeah.
and that that's a inverse downward pressure, I think, on the improvements that may or may not have been made over the past 10 years.
Yeah, we're talking about more sequels, more old
More
IPs,
safe things, like not taking the risks. And I think as you get older, like you can't take those risks, like even like where I'm at now, like I would love to go, there's a handful of studios I would love to go work for.
Yeah.
But like there's just that, I've been fortunate to
Yeah,
only have
afford
been
to.
through one layoff.
Yeah.
Right. And it's like I've been fortunate to be able to only go through one layoff in my career. And it's like I'm always just kind of waiting for that other shoe to drop. Like something's gonna happen. Like I have to be prepared for it. I have to
Yeah, it's kind of
it's funny. Like I this is the longest at Apple. This is the longest I've ever been in one place, and I'm coming up on 5 years, which is like
which is a normal amount of years.
which is a normal amount of years. Like
Yeah.
that was always the crazy thing about video games is I'm sure the break-even points in the graph has changed, but if you were in games for 5 years, like you were a senior. Like
Yeah.
you could, because there was such a drop off between 4 and 5 years because people would burn out and they'd go do something else, and so there was a huge pay jump at the 5 year mark, and that pay jump may or may not be good depending on the company that you're at. But the problem is now you have a whole bunch of people that really don't. They're really, really good at what they do. They're great individual contributors, but they're not managers.
Yeah.
And you see, seniors getting promoted to management or leads getting promoted to management. And then that just kind of starts the spiral of, well, you don't have the experience being a manager, but you do have the experience being a contributor. And that can cause problems at higher levels. And then you go on these horrible like cycles of layoffs after shipping a game, where all that accumulated knowledge and all that experience that was made as a team shipping this product gets lost. And so these companies hire up, get experience, and then they throw away the experience that they invested in. Yeah. It's like, what's the point of buying stock in a company at 3 years and then, I'm going to throw it away and buy that stock again.
Yeah.
Just hold on to it. Like hold on to the people that are making the game for you.
I know. It's something that I brought up and talk about all the time in this podcast. Like a few years ago, I was seeing this exodus of a lot of talented people that, for better or for worse, understand their value, right?
Yeah.
And I felt it was a huge loss because you want experienced guys who've gone through a AAA cycle, because you can learn from their mistakes and they can help guide the younger generation. It's never good to have this imbalance of young talent and no veterans to
Right.
help guiding them, right? It's the always having those two in a room will always be better for your company, for your bottom line, et cetera, right?
Oh yeah.
But like because of short-sightedness, these companies kind of push a lot of older folks out just by the structure, just
Hmm.
by encouraging 5-year people to do
Yeah.
such things, right? When they're not
Right.
ready, clearly not ready, but they're managing. And if there was ever a love letter, and maybe I'll do the Kobe thing, I do a love letter to the game industry at some point. And it's the same thing. I love the game industry because I love the people I've met. It's
Hmm.
still the coolest groups of people that
Totally.
are lifelong
Absolutely.
friends
Yeah.
that absolutely love talking to, that are very similar in personality, and everyone just clicks well, right? Because our
Yep.
passion is games, and games taught us basically how to be a person, right?
Yeah.
Growing up. But the number one thing I do also hate are the people as well. It's like the
Yeah.
managers that I've
Yeah.
had in my career pissed me so much off. It made me leave places
Yeah.
that I like, right? It made me
Yeah.
moved on, and it made me hate my day to day. I was a very negative person in a certain part of my career. Believe it or not, right? I know it's
Yeah.
hard to
Yeah.
imagine,
I know. It's like
but
this a whole new side of you.
I come home, it's just like, venting. It's like, oh, this
Mhm.
happened. I can't believe that happened. And it was annoying me, right? And I'm the
Yeah.
one saying it. And I didn't like the person I was becoming because, negativity only attracts negativity, right?
Right.
And,
Yeah.
but how can you ask someone to be good at their job and not be passionate about it, right? For us to be good and going through the grind and
Yeah.
put in the stupid hours, right, in
Yeah.
my little apartment, right? You basically have to love it. And
Yeah.
we hear this too, right? A lot of tech guys, we still love the game industry. It's just right now it's
Yeah.
not stable for us to come back,
Right.
right?
Right.
And that's the only problem that's preventing us. That and these middle managers and,
Yeah.
let's face it, a lot of producers. Right.
Like,
Until the majority of producers prove me wrong, I'm just gonna like blanket statement like producers.
I've had some amazing producers here at my current job. I mean, when push comes to shove, you're there to
You
ship
have
something,
to.
right? And
It's
so
a
you have to. And so it's usually those, like, so for a game dev cycle, right? It's 2.5 years of everything's fine, or 2 years of everything's fine. But when it really comes to pushing, then that's when it's like,
it's
oh,
real. The mask
this
comes off.
is real. This is, yeah, the mask comes off, and
It's
that's
like,
it. That's
hey, you remember Donut Fridays? No more
mhm.
donuts. We're just pausing it for a while. It's like
The fridge is a little empty these days. What's going on?
yeah, exactly, right.
Yeah, God, when I worked at Sony Online when they went through layoffs, and I remember starting to see the signs like 3 or 4 months in advance. You're just like, oh, this is kind of weird. All right. Ooh. Now, okay, this person left. And I think that going through those layoffs is
Oh
probably
yeah,
one of
that
the
was
best experiences because thereafter you can always tell. You can see it coming. So I went from Sony to Euphoria, which was a startup, and I was there for like 2.5 years, and I saw the signs like
yeah.
straight away, like 5 months out. And I just so happened to get approached by Sledgehammer and started working at Sledgehammer, and that startup went under like 2 months after I left. And even up until the point where they shut down, no one thought anything was wrong. Like, close the studio down, it's like 15, 20 people, no severance, no like, yeah, right. Well, there was
When you're in
no
it, yeah.
there was no like last paycheck. Like, everything's like done. Like, your benefits are cut off next week, no severance,
So
nothing.
scary.
Yeah, and I was like, oh man, I'm glad like I didn't go through that. And then the same thing with leaving Sledgehammer.
Yeah,
Like,
it's
it kind of
hard.
like crumbled a little bit, after
Yeah, and
shipping
we
World
meet
War
these
II.
folks, right, who's been through not just one, but a serial amount of layoffs, right? Just like
Yeah.
I know
Oh God, yeah. It's rough.
it's
It
like a
is so
curse
rough.
that they carry with them, right?
Yeah.
And it's hard not to be jaded after so
Mhm.
much rejection in their career, and I can't help but look at those guys and be like, I don't want to be that person where I'm caught. And I would say, yeah, some things have improved in the game industry, but it's more the same. If anything, the pandemic kind of exposed a lot of the issues
Yes. Yeah,
of the
I absolutely
industry,
agree with that.
and we are dealing with it. But I don't know it would be completely solved.
No.
Where it would be attractive for any of us to keep going back there and wanting some more, right? Like we're seeing a
Right.
lot of
No.
people leaving for smaller companies, smaller
Mhm.
finance companies, right? They're like not indie, but they're like fully financed. But
There.
there's 10 of us, and we're gonna change the culture. It's gonna be
Yeah.
different, be more diverse, right? This is something I always
Yeah.
tease about, and. But the characters are all the same people that caused the problem in the
Right.
last company, right? So
Right.
it's like,
You
hopefully
know,
it works out, but I'm very pessimistic.
it'll have to be, not like showing my age or anything, but I think it's going to be a 15, 20 year, timeline for any sort of like permanent or lasting change. And I think it's this new generation that are coming into this world
Yeah,
being surrounded by, you know, the mutual respect for the people that you work for. The whole like Me Too movement, diversity inclusion movement. I think once the younger generation that has grown up with that sort of respect for other people,
yeah,
when they start getting to that higher level in the games industry, that mid, that senior, that lead, I think that's when you'll start seeing lasting change.
yeah,
So I don't think it's going to be anything within 5 or 10 years. I think it's going to be that next generation that comes in and redefines what they did because they grew up with it. It's like you and I, like we didn't grow up with phones, or like with cell phones. Like it was kind of like, oh, someone's got a cell phone. All right, cool. I'm gonna go dig a hole in my backyard for the next 5 hours because I don't have anything else to do. And then you see kids now, like the phones are their lives. That's just
yeah,
it's the norm for them. And I think for the older folks, that sense of maybe respect's not the right word, but just that inclusion isn't the norm for them, or maybe it is, but industry wide it's not, or at least they try.
yeah,
But it's like okay, a good analogy is like someone who's a native speaker versus someone who's taught,
yeah,
right? Like the kids these days, they speak that language natively because they grew up in it,
yeah,
and that will force permanent change in the industry, I think.
yeah.
I hope.
I hope too, man, because I think overall it's gonna end up with a better product. I mean,
Oh,
there
of
are.
course.
I hate it when people kind of say there's a method to the madness of crunching people and aggressive deadlines and pushing people to the limit and creatively.
No.
It's not worth it, right? Because you burn
No.
out a lot of people, and like I said before, once you do one of these big games, you want those same people to be motivated to make the next big game, right? And return and do those things. And I'm just not seeing that. I don't know if the pandemic really pushed people to their limits, but I'm seeing a lot of on my LinkedIn, a lot of people who's been at like Blizzard or Riot for 20 plus
Tons.
years are leaving, right? It's like, whoa,
Yeah.
at this time when inflation is up, what is going
Yeah.
on? Like these are, if anything, before pre-tech, right? Before your group of people were like pioneers, people who are there for 20 years at these super established companies were kind of like the OGs of that's the path of retirement. Like stay at these big companies, you're safe, you're golden. I mean, they're being handed swords at Blizzard, right? For every 10-year commemorations, right? So they're literally given.
They know that place inside and out, and now they're leaving. And I've noticed the same thing over the past 2 years, for sure.
It's something I don't have a handle on what's really going on, but my sense is that people are questioning, basically, kind of like going through a midlife crisis, a game dev crisis right now, and unfortunately, the places I see they're going to is like, that's a bad move, man.
I've noticed that as well. Like, I wouldn't do that right now. I just stay put. Just stay put.
Yeah, but people are just so like frantic about like I need to do something, and hopefully it works out. But my I mean, overall they might be safe, but like I see a lot of like updates in the next year.
I think there's a lot of desperation moves being made right now.
Yeah.
Where people just feel like they need to change, And some people are going to make a good decision on that change, and some people aren't. My hunch, my instinct is just to stay put. The things are going to, the economy is.
Be thankful you have a job.
Yeah. And,
this is not the time to pick risks.
This is not the time to make big change. I mean, if you're young, you can take that risk. But people with family, it's like, nope, I'm going to park here for a little while. I'll let the storm blow overhead, and then later on down the line, we'll see what the storm brought in.
Yeah. That's I completely agree. Like, even like. Well, Apple, you guys are doing fine. I was sending you an article. You guys are one of two people are doing just fine. Basically, you guys bought benefit through the pandemic and are keeping all the profits. Yeah. And every other company right now, like Meta, I'm sure you have a lot of friends over at Facebook that are kind of like really.
Yeah, I just got. So one of them just reached out yesterday. He'd only been there a couple of months, and it was hey, what do you got going on?
I'm not sure. It's like, what do you think? Yeah. Of course, dude. Have you seen what you guys been making lately? Is any of that interesting to you?
Yeah. Well, yeah. That's the thing. There's the whole financial aspect of getting, kind of hired over at a place like that, because they dangle a lot of money at you.
Oh yeah.
But it's like you have to divorce yourself from the finances and be like, is this something that's sustainable long term?
Look at the product itself.
Right.
It's something that you would buy. That still matters, and I feel. Like, even then, where I think a year and a half ago, I was like, yeah, you got to go into tech. You got to go tech. It's like right now, it's like, just hold on. Unless it's Apple. Yeah. Just hold on.
Yeah.
Don't take any crazy risks. Everyone is uncertain right now.
Well, and especially with tech, like I think the average career span at a tech company is like just under 2 years. Oh, so if you look at it like through that lens, you're like, okay, maybe I could do something good in 2 years, but do I really want to be in this position in 2 years again? Yeah. Maybe you get a good sign-on bonus, but might not be worth it. So.
Well, it is relieving to kind of hear you're doing well overall.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think everybody kind of who went through this crisis. I always tell people it's good to go through a layoff, because the people I've met who went through a layoff do think differently about. The career choices and just how overall they show up to work with a different attitude. It's like, I'm just thankful I have this, but not resting on their laurels either, right? They're like,
and I think that's the important part. I've always tried to view myself as a freelancer working on site. I'm a business that I bring to a company. That business is how I conduct myself. The business is the results that I bring. The business is the people I can coordinate together. And I think if you don't think of yourself as just as someone who comes in, does hard work and leaves, but you think of yourself as a business, then you start to cultivate that around you. And it forces you to rely on yourself for these things. And so, like that going through a layoff, it definitely forced that within myself. Say, okay, well, this can end at any time. Yeah. I'm going to conduct myself accordingly, and I'm not going to get too chained or too in on it. I'm not going to rest. And I think that's the key, especially for artists when everything's so visual. I mean, you could spend 4 years working at a company and it goes under, and there's nothing on your portfolio to show for it.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's the best advice that I've heard for people in this trying time. To just show up to work. You're a consultant, right? The company is on your borrowed time. You give them a solid good 8 hours a day, no more, no less. Right?
Yes.
Be fair about it. And then you leave, because that's just the industry still. Don't, like, when I see people like get geared up with all the swag, it's like, oh, he's sucked in.
I guess I can't on that side, God, the reverse image of
right now.
Okay,
yeah. But I'm talking about
it's true.
Typical students. Yeah.
It's true. Like I think there's a God, how do I put this? Experience. I think, especially my experience, tells me that you just don't get too close to work. Yeah. You can find the relationships that work with the people you work with, but it's not everything. And I think that's always the hardest part to learn, because you enter into this industry as a passion work. as thing that you would love to do. And I think that's always kind of the hardest thing about it, is to, over time of working in the games industry, like you learn to distance it from yourself, especially going through a layoff. Like, okay, I can't get too excited about this, and I need to conduct myself as a business. Like, it's much more of a job than you would ever imagine. It always sounds like, oh, I'm going to sit in a room with a bunch of people and make fun games, but it's a job and treat it as such. It's not everything.
Yeah, that's so true. If you, it's nihilistic. Don't think of it as nihilistic, but like it's like if you expect disappointment, you won't get disappointed, right? Don't think it like that. But
it's a little
more positive and realistic. It is an exchange in services, right?
Mm-hmm.
They pay you for your skill set. You give them that skill set, but you go home and you're your own separate person. And maybe, like you said, 15, 20 years down the line, when here's the best promise and version of the game industry that I've seen that is still part of games, but not really. It's the mobile market. It's when I was working at a mobile company in SF, it was my preview of like, oh, this is what game companies could be, right? Still making games for an audience of the gaming sector, which is weird, right? Because mobile players and AAA players never really cross as much. Now it's kind of different. You see Fortnite.
It's a little different, but
Warzone, but they're still kind of separate. But like, it was a preview of a company within the studio, within the industry, where I felt like, hey, this is how we should conduct business. I mean, it was cool because it felt like we show up to work, and I'm pretty sure you guys have this. There's always like some kind of activity going on. Culture is a big thing, and they're always trying to do things to kind of keep you happy. They're talking about diversity. They're talking about how to make things better. And then, oh yeah, we make games too. It's like, all right, when you start making games, don't worry about it. Don't think about it as I have to get this done right now. It's more like, let's make it as best we can. There is like this luxury of time, as long as you're profitable, right?
Yeah, the big asterisk at the end.
Still take time because we're still making money, right? Take time, make the next DLC awesome, right? But it gave me a lot of hope, and for whatever reason, and maybe EA is doing this because they're doing microtransactions. But even then, when they're doing microtransaction, it's not the same atmosphere, right? And I think a lot of it has to do with the majority of the mobile companies. At least the one I worked at, but like I talked to other friends that work at a mobile company, aren't game developers. Or at least didn't come up in the traditional game development scene. Right. They came from college. They came from other industries. And when we talk about like, oh, this is my experience in AAA, it's like, what the fuck is wrong with you guys? It's like, I had a manager that was trying to stab me in the back and was whispering all these things to my other manager and was preventing me. It's like, what? I thought you guys make games. What is Game of Thrones? What's going on? And it was like horrific.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I've worked with some mobile developers at past companies, but I've never worked for mobile.
But mobile, I kind of pertaining to that's probably how it's like at tech companies, because they're very different. Yeah. And right out of college, they're expecting 401k, company stocks. Isn't that the norm? If you're not working there for these perks, why are you working there? She's like, that's a good question. It's like,
oh, damn. I wasn't going to be reflective today, but now you forced it.
It's like, oh, it's not for paycheck to paycheck. She's like, why would you? Didn't you go to college, bro? Like, aren't you trying to like make your life better? You didn't get out of debt to go back into debt, right? While working. It's like, oh my god. But it was refreshing to kind of see a mixture of realities. Because I think I was in a bubble for a while, not knowing.
Yes, and I think the bubble is a perfect word for it. Like, you get out of it and you're like, oh, this actually is a little bit more comfortable out here. Damn, all right, I guess I'll still do the artwork and I'll still like pay attention to the industry, but I like this. This is good.
I'm pretty sure you guys have a quarter in Apple where all these AAA guys are coming into your company for the first time. They have all like this PTSD jitters. Like, hey, yo, calm down.
It's okay.
Get coffee from our cafeteria. It's like, what?
Yeah.
No one's clocking me.
It's funny because I work probably with more film folks. And film industry is even crazier. Yeah, because they're like on like 3-month contract and 6-month contract, and they're like going all over the world because they don't know where they're going to end up. And so
work weeks is kind of the norm.
Oh yeah, it's ridiculous. And so hearing their stories is like, okay, now I think I prefer games like it's the same side, two sides of the same coin. Yeah, but yeah, it's I don't know if evolved. It's just different branches in the sludge, I guess. Yeah, but no, it's been eye opening to watch those folks come in.
Yeah, and that's why it's hard not to be pessimistic about the game industry. And I hope you're right. Even when you say 15, 20 years, I'm hoping that's the case because there's hope in that. But because of how our close cousin, the movie industry, have been so successful, right? I remember working at the Digital Domain for a little while, right? And this effects guy was parking right in the front with his freaking Ferrari. And I was like, who's that guy? Walking in like he's a rock star. He's just a nerd behind a computer. What's going on here?
What's here?
Don't even talk to him, right? You can't talk to him. He talks to the director Spielberg, and he consults. He's the guy when the directors come to, right? It's like, all right, come on. You're a nerd behind a computer. You're a few steps away from me. Let's calm down.
Yeah.
But like that's the respect. In terms of respect, movies has it where games are starting to, but not. I don't think we'll ever get quite to the same level of like movie people, right?
Right.
And they're still living contract to contract and being shipped around.
Yeah, that's a little sobering, I guess, when you put it in that way.
Yeah, it hasn't improved at all since I've seen it happening, and I hope games don't become that way where we can improve from where we are.
I hope so too. The games industry has always been my first love, and so I hope for the best for it. Yeah, I think it brings together like so many awesome people, like you said earlier. Like it's
funnest group.
Yeah, I mean, you galvanize so many relationships by the crappy things you have to go through, and maybe that's it. It's kind of like a little boot camp in a way. Exactly. But I mean, there are awesome people, and I hope that it continues to get awesome people, and that those awesome people turn out to be awesome managers and awesome founders and awesome directors.
Here's the hopeful diversion. I think when things get a little better and tech people get a little more bored, but it becomes stable enough, or at least somewhat almost attractive enough, where some tech people bring some of that culture over, and it's like, hey, this is how it's kind of done outside of this bubble, and things need to change. I see that maybe happening down the line to kind of help push for change, because, like you said, it's like a lot of people are stuck in the matrix right now, and it really does take people outside the matrix to come in to kind of change things up.
Absolutely.
You have to accept living in a closet, bro. Letting your hands. You can live outside this closet and earn a nice living.
You can, and then just if you enter back in the industry, bring it back with you, bring that mindset back. Like things can happen. Oh, it's a trip.
It's a trip, and I'm looking forward to seeing your journey, man.
Absolutely. Likewise.
Killing it in the tech world. We are hitting that hour mark, and I want to thank you for coming on and spending time with me. I know you're a busy man. This is the point where a lot of good people want to kind of find out where you are in terms of the portfolio, right? In terms of how to connect with you, all this stuff.
Yeah.
So anything that you feel like you want to share to the good people out there, the mic is yours.
So portfolio is all on ArtStation. I gave up the personal website 10 years ago. So you can find me on ArtStation. You can find me on LinkedIn, just Ryan Bullock. Can you find it? I love hearing from people who have questions about the industry. I still mentor a little bit on the side. So if you're a individual who, prefers more direct interaction, just my email, ryansbullock@gmail.com. Send me thoughts, questions, anything. I'll be happy to answer as soon as I can. I'm not much on Twitter or anything else, so that's going to be it as far as the socials go for me.
All right, cool. Yeah, I'm the same too.
Cool.
I hate talking.
Yeah,
Surprisingly.
yeah, yeah. I'm on it, but not enough to want
It's a lot of
to be on it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Cool,
Well,
man. Well, I appreciate you having me. This was a lot of fun talking shop. I don't get enough of the video game, shop
always,
talk.
yeah, it's trading war stories, man.
Heck
It's
yeah.
what I miss the most.
Yep. Yeah. Cool.
All right.
Well, thanks again for having me, and I look forward to seeing what you do with your time here.
Of course.
It seems like you're always off doing stuff. So
I'm a busy bee, I guess.
busy bee.
Not
Yep.
too distracted.
Hopefully
Well,
not too distracted.
Thanks for tuning in, guys. Thanks for listening. See you guys next week.